mapping a drive to Windows Explorer. I'll tell you a little bit about B2B Technologies. Founded in 1998. We have a deep partnership with Microsoft, a Cloud Accelerate partner, as well as a managed gold partner. We have a very wide range of competencies. So B2B, we cover just about everything in the Microsoft stack, certainly everything related to Office 365. And a couple notes about the B2B team in case you guys don't know us. These are some comments from our actual customers, and I'll just point out some of the highlights. We have a lot of long-term staff here, an entrepreneurial environment. We're very flexible, which is what helps us to create good solutions for our customers, and we really excel at the hard stuff when it comes to the Microsoft technologies. And we've heard that B2B Technologies has done more Office 365 migrations than any other Microsoft partner in the Southeast. That includes some Live at EDU to Exchange Online implementation, some corporations to Exchange Online. We've also done a governance white paper for Office 365 that's published by Microsoft, but also available for download on the B2B Tech site as well as on TechNet. As I mentioned before, we're in the Azure Circle for Microsoft. I know we're going to be focused more on Office 365 than Azure in this demo, but we also cover Azure. A partial solution to what we're talking about today is available on CodePlex. So some of the drive mapping technology is available for free for you to download. Then a little bit of a plug on our SharePoint practice. We've done over 190 custom SharePoint solutions. So that's not features. That's end-to-end, install to deployment of custom SharePoint implementations. So let's talk a little bit about this OneDrive mapping. OneDrive is getting a lot of attention nowadays. One of the reasons for all the attention is because of the online storage that you get. 1 terabyte to start with, and it really is unlimited. If you choose to, Microsoft will expand if you're able to fill up a terabyte in the cloud. Terabyte is a lot for personal storage. This has a great value proposition to organizations because on-site storage is expensive, not just to purchase disks, but it's expensive to maintain. You have to do tape backups, you have to monitor it, you have to keep it running all the time. Imagine if people's personal drives went down and they weren't able to access them. So you need to build in redundancy when you're doing it locally, and OneDrive presents a really great option to eliminating those costs. Another problem that a lot of businesses face is their employees have to log in via VPN before they're able to access their personal drives from home or from the road. And it's just, the VPN login process can be very cumbersome, and by going with a cloud solution like OneDrive, you can really simplify the access points and make it accessible from anywhere. And along with accessibility from anywhere comes a sharing feature, so that if you choose to, you can share files in your personal OneDrive with colleagues inside or outside the organization. And of course, this is managed storage, which brings me to a point here. Right now we're talking about OneDrive for Business, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the webinar. But throughout the webinar, you're going to be seeing the term OneDrive used over and over again. So I want to make sure that everybody who's on this call understands the difference between regular OneDrive and OneDrive for Business. There's regular OneDrive, which is for personal file storage. That's what you're going to do with your personal documents that are not work-related, your family photos and such. And that's a consumer service, and you can use one of your consumer Microsoft credentials to access that. OneDrive for Business is different. The technology is very similar, but it really is a different product. OneDrive for Business is your personal drive for business documents. So the documents that you might store on your personal shared network folder at work would now be stored in OneDrive for Business. And for IT administrators, this is great because it allows your business to still have control over the intellectual assets that your employees are creating. And that helps you manage it, and you can you stay in compliance with what's being uploaded as well. So there are a few challenges, though, with implementing OneDrive for Business. And so we'll talk about that, and that'll give you an idea of why this OneDrive mapping solution is so popular. One of the issues with OneDrive is getting users used to a new place to store files. So you can browse with your favorite web browser to OneDrive for Business, and you can use the web-based interface to upload and access files. That works just fine. The problem for your users is that it's going to be a heck of a lot different than what they've been doing for the last 15 years, which is opening up Windows Explorer and navigating to their Z drive and finding their personal files there. So it's a behavioral shift that, that people don't have to do if you go with a solution like ours. Uploading via the browser is not perfectly intuitive. Yes, you can drag and drop, but it's just not the same interface of Windows Explorer that people are used to. Now, if you're using Office 2013, then you'll have a syncing tool already installed on your machine, and perhaps some of you have even downloaded it separately and installed it. There is a piece of software from Microsoft that will allow for syncing from OneDrive to your PC. The problem is, and we're going to discuss this in greater detail in a moment, but the syncing isn't always feasible for you. The syncing tool from Microsoft has gotten a lot of criticism, and it probably is not going to work well for all of your users. So let's talk for a moment about what the user experience is like with the OneDrive mapping, because user experience is a lot of the value that this provides. So you can choose your drive letter. Maybe it's an H drive so that it looks just like the home drive that your users are used to. It's going to be familiar. You don't need to open a browser at all. And for some of you, there's no local storage is required. So if you have shared environments, a shared terminal, shared PCs, or perhaps you're using a thin client, and you don't want to have your full terabyte on your hard disk, local storage is not required. So you can move from PC to PC, and all of your files will move with you, and they won't be left on the old hard drive. And it also doesn't sync. There's a lot of challenges with bandwidth and performance on syncing. So you can see in this screenshot, you'll be able to browse OneDrive using the File Explorer, and you'll be able to drag and drop and create folders and do what you normally do in File Explorer, except that the documents will be stored in OneDrive. You can also set up specific user libraries. So if you want, my documents or my pictures to be OneDrive folders, that works as well. And we'll do a demo a little bit later on, and I'll show you exactly what the user experience is like. Again, with the OneDrive benefits, unlimited storage, you can access it from anywhere, and then there's very simple sharing, inside or outside of your organization using the browser. I spoke earlier about the sync tool. that is available with Office 2013. The sync tool does not meet the needs of most organizations. And before I run down this matrix, I'll tell you why. We've done some internal testing, and we've set recommendations to our customers to, under most circumstances, not use the syncing tool. Through our testing, we used our personal drive storage here at B2B and tested with a few people with the volume of files that they had, volume and size, and we found that the syncing tool would crash your PC. So the upper limit on it was, I think, around 20 to 25 gigabytes, which will render your computer unusable. In smaller quantities, the syncing tool does work, and by smaller, perhaps 50 files, maybe 100 files, but that's very difficult to enforce from an IT governance policy, to tell people, oh, here's a tool, but if you use over 100 or 500 files, then expect your computer to crash. That's not a very safe thing to do. So we don't recommend using the syncing tool, although I should point out that it is available. The syncing tool requires local storage because it's going to move the files down from OneDrive onto your disk. Like I said before, the B2B mapping tool does not, which makes it easier for you to move from PC to PC and makes it more suitable for shared machines. The bandwidth requirement on the syncing tool is very high. I talked about how it crashed the PC, but there's also network performance issues to consider if all of your users start quickly syncing their documents from the cloud to the PC, or even if worse, if they try to sync from the PC to the cloud. Offline access, well, because there's the mapping tool does not provide syncing and does not use local storage, the B2B mapping solution on its own does not provide offline access to the files. You still need to have an internet connection to reach OneDrive for Business. However, we have seen some advanced users use the syncing tool as appropriate. So they might only sync the 50 files in the current working folder that they're using. So then on an airplane, they can work offline if you don't pay for the airplane internet connection. And we found that works okay. But again, just beware that if you start syncing a large quantity of files, it can be very detrimental to PC performance. Both of them provide access from anywhere, and both solutions are cross-device compliant. So talk a little bit now about how this solution works for all the techies in the audience here. The script is deployed via a group policy object to machines that are joined on the domain. And for smooth authentication, we recommend ADFS for Office 365. That's Active Directory Federation Services. Active Directory Federation Services allows for a single point of authentication for all your Office 365 properties. So before it works, we need to make sure that we provision the OneDrives for all of your users. Simply adding a OneDrive license to your users in Office 365 doesn't physically create their OneDrive. So if you want to have your users using OneDrive immediately and not go through a click and wait for it to start provisioning with a message that says this may take up to 24 hours to provision, we provide a PowerShell script which will provision the OneDrive for all the users in your organization. Step 2 is to map the OneDrive. It's a customized login script that will map the OneDrive to a drive level. This script is executed at login, and it's deployed via a group policy object, and it creates the map drive. It occurs at every login instance. And some optional things that some of our customers ask for, but not all of them, is to to set up, my documents and my pictures, or even a desktop to use specific libraries within OneDrive. That can be done. Also, we can help you migrate content from your on-prem file servers into OneDrive. Now, I mentioned ADFS earlier, and that is our preferred solution, but we do know that some people are only using Dersync, so Dersync with password sync, I should say. So there is a Dersync option. It's not quite as seamless, but it might be acceptable for your organization. Again, it still requires that the machine that's going to have the map drive is joined to the domain. But after login, the user is going to be prompted to enter the Office 365 credentials again. And that's because ADFS allows for pass-through authentication, but Dersync does not. So there's one extra credential check that the user will have to respond to before the drive gets mounted. And we can rebrand the prompt for Office 365 credentials to match your corporate branding. I'll talk briefly here about pricing, and then I'm going to jump into the demonstration here. It's about 2 weeks for implementation without any additional licensing. And this is for the basic package. This doesn't include things like content migration. This is just to set up the mapped drive. So, step one is, doing the provisioning for all of the users in your organization. And once those drives exist, then we can go to step two to map them. If you try to map a drive that doesn't exist, you'll get a poor user experience with your drive mapping. So first we have to make them exist, and then we push out the drive mapping script. And so I'm going to jump out here and do a very quick demo. It's always a challenge to figure out how do you do a useful demo of a mapped drive when I think everybody on the call knows what a mapped drive looks like. But I'm going to show it to you here and show a little bit of behaviors, and so you can see what the user experience is like. So if you look here on the left on my machine, I have my OneDrive mapped to my Z drive. I've got 2 folders in my OneDrive, and if you're wondering what is this Forms folder that's grayed out, I have it set up to show hidden files and folders. That's a global setting on my machine. And so from here, from this familiar Windows Explorer interface, I'm going to create a new file, and maybe we'll just call this OneDrive demo. Put a little bit of content in there. So I've just added a file to to my Z drive using a very familiar technique. Or I could drag and drop in here. I can use this like any other Windows folder. Now I'm going to go to my browser. And with the browser, I'm pulling up my OneDrive for Business. So what I need to do here is refresh my browser. And this interface, to show that the drive mapping is working, you can see here this asterisk indicates a new file that I have a OneDrive demo document added just a few seconds ago by Brad Kasmer. Now I'll show you something really cool. I'm going to jump back into my map drive, and here's the file that I just added, the OneDrive demo, and that's a throwaway file. So I'm going to right-click and delete it, the same way that your users would do it. Are you sure you want to delete this file? Yes, I'm sure. And I'm sure because I'm still leveraging some of the power of OneDrive. I'm going to jump back here into the browser. Now that I'm in the browser, I'm going to refresh it. And you'll see that that new file is gone. But one of the things that you get with OneDrive is a recycle bin, very similar to the SharePoint recycle bin. I'm going to click on the recycle bin here on the left nav. And here's that file. This is the file that I deleted from the interface in Windows Explorer, and it's going into my OneDrive recycle bin. So I'm still getting some of these features of OneDrive without having to use the browser interface. So I can purge this from my recycle bin. And and go back to my main documents. So that's what I wanted to show. Whoops. Let's jump back here. So that's what I wanted to show you guys with the demo. And at this point, I'd like to open this up for questions about the OneDrive mapping or OneDrive for Business in general. Are there any questions? Chelsea's shaking her head. I don't think we had any questions pop in. I know mapping a drive sounds pretty simple.
Hold on, we have some. We have a few coming in.
Oh, great.
Mark has a question.
Sure. Would you mind reading it off, Chelsea, just to make sure everybody,
Yeah,
people who only called in to make sure they can hear it?
I think he is typing it.
Oh, okay.
Mark, if you want to go ahead and with your question. He says, how do you secure or prevent folks from accessing OneDrive data from a non-corporate owned asset?
I think there's a way, and I'm looking at my team here.
He says, or can you?
I think that there are access control limits that you can set in Azure AD Premium if you choose to upgrade your authentication. That's not an out-of-the-box feature. That's just available with a general OneDrive license. But that is, I think you can set up an ACL in Azure AD. Do you guys know any other way to do it?
No, if they have an Office 365 account and that's how they're getting to it, there's really nothing to stop them out of the box.
Is there something that can be set up if you're using ADFS for authentication? Is that something that you can set up in ADFS?
I'm not sure.
Possibly. That's where I would look for a solution. That is kind of an unusual need, but I do understand, wanting to control the risk of spreading out corporate assets. I think ADFS might be the way to look on that. Of course, I'll also point out some people are really excited about the access to files from anywhere feature.
Yeah, and another part of that would be getting like governance of what people are allowed to put in their OneDrives. And then there are tools, third-party tools that you can purchase that actually prevent people from uploading certain types of files and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But again, nothing out of the box.
But there are some out-of-the-box tools, though, that'll help you monitor what is out there, though, to see if there is some sensitive content that's on the OneDrive that perhaps shouldn't be on the OneDrive, and then your IT staff can take the appropriate action to have that removed.
Okay. Hopefully that answers your question, Mark. If anybody else has any questions, you can go ahead and type them in the conversation box, and we'll just hang around for a couple minutes in case you think of anything you want to ask.
In the meantime, I'll ask this question to the audience. Has anybody ever tried to fill up 1 terabyte in their OneDrive for Business? If you have successfully exceeded one terabyte of storage on your OneDrive, please message us. We'll find a giveaway for you, a virtual giveaway for the webinar.
Mark also asked, is it easy to prevent people, is it easy to prevent people from uploading certain file types like AVIs, MP3s, large files?
I wouldn't say easy. There's ways to do it. I know there's new some new tools coming out. I'm not quite sure where they're at right now. I know the data loss prevention tools may have something in them to stop that. There are third-party tools that you can straight block somebody from uploading certain types of files. There's a short list of file types that you can't upload to OneDrive at all, but those are not included. Like MP3s and AVIs are not in that list.
Yeah, the types of files that are in the prohibited file list, just by default for OneDrive, are files that are, essentially code executables. Things that can be potentially malicious scripts or executables that could cause viruses. And I think the maximum size for a file right now is it 100?
Tom did ask, is there a 20,000 file limit on OneDrive?
So here, let me address that, because that's a really common misconception. So there's a 20,000 file sync limit in the sync tool that is completely exclusive to the sync tool itself. OneDrive allows you to upload as many files as you want. Your limits are the limits. I think it's several million items. I want to say like 10 million items that you can add that are the same limits as any other SharePoint document library. The 20,000 item limit, I've seen a bunch of discussions on forums about that, and it's just not been addressed properly, but there is not a limit of 20,000 files that are allowed. That's just, if you're running a sync tool and you have more than 20,000 files in your OneDrive, then it's going to choke up on that. It's not going to give you a message or anything. You're just going to start seeing little red X's next to each of the documents that don't sync, and you're also already going to run into a pretty horrible user experience well before you get to 20,000 documents.
To that point, Chad Heath said that they've hit the limits on the sync client, and that with less than 2 gigabytes. He says, my company has a little over 3 gigabytes that was formerly on their file share. We uploaded to OneDrive and used the OneDrive for Business app to sync to replicate the user experience in Windows Explorer. But there's a 20,000 file sync limit, and with just over 3 gigabytes, my company is already at the 15,000 files.
Yeah. So again, it's there's a limit of number of files for the sync tool, not a limit on the number of files for OneDrive.
Yeah, and so for our tool with mapping, you will not hit that. It'll never say anything about that. You won't have any issues like that at all. I see a question here that says, yes, but the SharePoint option is nowhere near the same user experience as the file share. They were used to using SharePoint. There's only 5,000 file limit per site, meaning they would have to have several buckets. There's not actually a 5,000 file limit per site either. I'm not sure. I know there's a view limit of 5,000 that I know on-prem you could tinker with. In the cloud, I'm not sure if there's an option to change that, but that's actually the view limit. That's not a limit on what's allowed in a library. So they don't want to bring back more than, basically Microsoft doesn't want their query to bring back more than 5,000 items at a time. But that's not a site limit, and that's definitely not a library limit. That's just the view limit. And the sync limit per site, that sync limit is per library, I believe. And again, that's not really, you're already probably going to be running into issues once you hit that anyway. The thing with the sync tool, that it's kind of a nice idea, I guess, but at no point are you really going to need to have several thousand files synced between OneDrive and your machine unless you just want to, and the tool just isn't very efficient. There are other tools out there and other products that offer the same type of thing that are more efficient, that have nothing to do with OneDrive, but at present, Microsoft's sync offering just isn't there yet. Again, though, that doesn't have the mapping option. You don't have to deal with any of that. You just use it just like a typical map drive, and nothing actually lives on your computer. A use case that we've actually used this for was there was no local storage whatsoever. We had a client that had a thin client implementation, and all of their storage was in OneDrive. And that's been used for 60,000 plus users, and they've had a great user experience thus far. Did that take care of everybody's questions? Is there anything else? Once this is set up, what about adding new users to it? So as part of the OneDrive provisioning script that we implement, and that's part of the package that we offer, we also walk you through the process of when new users are added, basically adding the provisioning script onto the end of your user provisioning. So like somebody joins your company and they have an AD account created. That AD account is synced with Dersync, and after that, our process kicks off. And that's on like a case-by-case basis per implementation, because people do that a lot of different ways. But basically, we put that at the end. And part of the OneDrive provisioning also verifies that the OneDrive actually exists. And once that exists, then we know that the mapping script will work. And the GPO is going to push that out to that user anyway as soon as they start logging in. But the best user experience that we've seen and the way that we recommend doing this, and part of the package that we provide, is to get that new user add bit added to the end of your user provisioning.
So regarding provisioning new users, with the engagement from B2B Technologies, you are provided with all the collateral, the scripts that we use to provision OneDrive and to map it. And we also provide to your staff training on how to execute those scripts. So we only require, though, that you only use the scripts for internal use only, and not to share them. If you want the shared version, that's available on Codeplex. So your staff will be able to provision new users as they need to be onboarded.
I also see there's another question from
yeah, Walt just says that he's at a school district, so he's deleting and adding students every year.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess to go along with his last question about adding and deleting users.
And yeah, we've implemented this for school districts, and they're using it effectively. So that's a pretty common use case, actually. We have one very, very large school district is actually using it as well. So we've seen this from fairly large to very large school districts work, and they're able to, they've been using it without issue.
Once again, if you have any other questions, go ahead and type them in the chat window. We'll wait around for a couple minutes. I know we're a little ahead of schedule, so we'll be here until all the questions are answered. There's another question from Mark. Is there MDM functionality with OneDrive or mobile?
There's a OneDrive mobile app. Yeah, the OneDrive mobile app that is used, that you can put on, I'm trying to think if there's any of the more popular devices that they don't have one for. But yeah, that would be handled straight through. Like I know they have an app for iPhone and Windows Phone. I'm not sure about Android phones. I have to think that they do, though. I know a big push from Microsoft right now is that they're a software company and they want their software to work on all devices.
And there's a product called Intune, which Microsoft provides that's specifically for mobile device management. And I believe that there are, in an upcoming release, there's some features added for OneDrive. That's what we've heard from some of our contacts at Microsoft. Is there a specific feature, Mark, that you're looking for?
I just did a quick search and I found there is a OneDrive on Android. So they do have an app out there.
Mark says no, he was just wondering what kind of access for mobile devices there was out there.
Yeah, and that's what I think Intune would provide. And just to be clear, Intune is a separate product. It's not part of the drive mapping solution. But Intune, as the MDM solution from Microsoft, can identify whether or not a device is approved by the organization, and then decide whether or not to restrict access to the properties under control. And those properties can be OneDrive, amongst others.
So Mark says, so we need Intune for the desktop, laptop level.
No. You do not need Intune if you're just using domain-joined desktops and laptops.
Yeah, that was just specific to MDM and preventing different mobile devices from getting in.
Right, yeah. Intune is for mobile device management.
He just says, our company deals with sensitive information, so we need to control where the data goes.
Yeah, and that's pretty common. And there's new data language or data loss prevention tools coming out from Microsoft pretty much as we speak. And then there's also third-party tools to allow you even more control over that sort of thing.
Mark says, how do you know you're at your limit? How do you know you're at your limit notifications for? Is it email to the associate, alerts to IT, assuming there's some in there somewhere? I think we understand that question.
So there is actually no limit on data. So that, I mean, it's not gonna send you an email and say you've used up all your space because you can't use up all your space. If that's what you're asking.
Mark, maybe Mark is wondering about the sync tool, where there is an item limitation.
Yeah, and if you're asking about the sync tool, it does not tell you that you've hit your limit. It just stops syncing stuff, and it puts little red X's by the document.
Yeah. And again, we really don't recommend using the sync tool.
So it's, at present, I just saw your question about the 1 terabyte. At present, it's 1 terabyte. It's moving to unlimited.
Yeah, so basically, the process works more or less like this, that, if you are encroaching on your 1 terabyte, you can submit a request to Microsoft, and I don't know all the details for the request because people aren't approaching the 1 terabyte limit, because that's a lot to upload to the cloud, but they can then provision more space for you as needed.
And is that going to be how it goes moving forward, or that just goes away when they're rolling it out all the way?
Well, and I'm not even 100% sure whether it's going to be automatic new provisioning, like they'll monitor and just add more space, or if it's going to be, some type of, digital request that gets sent in.
And I will be sending out the slide deck from Brad after the webinar, so if any of you had any trouble seeing the presentation, or you just want to go back and go through some things, you will be receiving that. Okay, so it doesn't seem like there's any more questions at this point, so I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. Like I said, I will be sending out the slides from the presentation, so be on the lookout for that, and we want to thank you for joining us today. And if you have any questions, you can always email Brad at bkasmer@b2btech.com. It's spelled out right there in the presentation. And anyways, we hope you have a great day. Bye.
The leader has disconnected. The conference will be terminated in 5 minutes.